Have one and all. Let's see if we got it. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jason.
This is our EDA special meeting. It's Tuesday, June the 3rd, 2025, and we started at 5:30. We've done the call to order and we've approved the special meeting agenda. And there are two items on our agenda, the Community Branding Committee assignment review and our 2026 EDA budget discussion and adjournment. So, we did discuss at our information meeting we had last Tuesday about the budget discussion. So why don't we just touch base on that first?
I'm gonna say, yeah, since Adam and her are coming, yeah, let's take a look at that first.
So that's in the packet, wasn't it?
Yep, the copy of the budget's in the packets as well as the proposal to council, as well as the copy of the memo from council as to what they are kind of looking for. So I put together a little budget for you guys that includes just kind of showing, the first page just shows over the past 3 years what our budget has been, what we've spent, what we should have left over. Most EDAs have their own physical account that then they're able to, if they don't spend their whole budget, they're able to maintain those funds. They don't just disappear at the end of the year. That way you end up being able to put it into an account that accrues interest, that you're able to budget your own long-term plans from, not just the short-term plans for that year. So technically, we should still have left over from last year, the $1,892.17. Because that was what was left over from the grant that then would have been put towards the CETA contract. But that CETA contract budget was already awarded to the EDA, so we should have that as well. This year, right now, we're at a complete zero out, because we've got our regular budget for the CETA contract. And then we also have the $10,000 in grant money for the community branding, the $5,000 donation that came in for community branding, and the additional $5,000 from council for that project. So what we're looking at tonight is what we think we want to be asking for 2026. And we also want to make sure that we're able to justify those costs, what we're asking for. The following pages are really just for your reference. I was able to pull the receipts from the past couple of years, just so that you guys have a listing of that, but they're summaried on that front page. And then the memo from council was kind of adding in some information about the key discussion items that they were going to be discussing when talking about awarding money to different groups and organizations. I tried as best I could to be able to create just kind of a one-pager that we can provide to council that tells them who we are, what we're asking for, and what we plan to do with it. So I did kind of describe what the Economic Development Authority is, who we work for, what types of work we do. And then making a request for $50,000 for fiscal year 2026. And in that request would be a CETA contract. This would be a request for the full CETA contract of one day each week. If we did decide you'd like to change that, we certainly can alter it. I do have the numbers for a part-time one. Hey. So the CETA contract would be $33,745 if we did the 1 day a week contract. I think I just heard Adam come in too.
He is right behind me.
Excellent.
Sorry, guys.
No, you're just fine.
So we just jump to our EDA budget discussion first, and then circle back to the branding, but
And what I'm just kind of going over briefly is there's the memo from council as to what they were kind of looking for. Adam, I know you saw this last time. But I did go ahead and create kind of a one-pager that tells council who we are and what we're looking for. So we just got started on that. It'd be a total request for $50,000 for the next year with a 1 day a week CETA contract. But I did also include a number of bullet points underneath as to what that contract also includes. So it does include the 416 hours for one day each week, but it also includes the small business outreach. It includes the creation of a business database, a housing study, being able to do the RFP, so the request for proposal process through that, as well as maintaining the project through its beginning and end stages. Marketing feasibility studies. CETA does have the ability to provide market feasibility studies for different business sectors. So if we were looking for meat processors, or we were looking for a new bar or restaurant, we'd be able to utilize that and at no cost, and be able to find out, you know, are we leaking money that we could be making? What type of, you know, how much, what's the feasibility essentially for these businesses to come in? Typically, those types of studies can run between $3,000 to $8,000 a piece. Those would be coming along with the CETA contract. Recruitment of any of these identified businesses would come with that contract. Engaging with Mayo Clinic and the city of Rochester to identify some potential partnerships for establishing a shuttle bus service. Age-friendly Orinoco, working to accomplish goals of age-friendly Orinoco that support economic development and city growth. And then Parks and Recreation, working with the Parks and Rec Department to identify and apply for funding for new services and amenities. Obviously, all of this is as per the EDA's direction. But just kind of giving an overview to council as to some of the things that come along with that CETA contract. Without a CETA contract, those things would not be able to take place without investing additional funds to make that happen. So just wanting to make sure that's in there. We did talk about the idea of doing a housing study, being used to help for recruitment of developers, also being able to help know what it is we exactly need so that council's able to make really good educated decisions based on the types of housing that different developers are proposing. And then there is, and I meant to put that in here, that there is also a $5,000 Compeer financial grant that I would anticipate there being no problem in getting. I've yet to see one of our CETA reps not get one that we've applied for. It is only $5,000, but it certainly takes care of at least half of the cost of that study.
That's just a side note to your housing study.
Yep. Yep. That's something that you could get with or without CETA. I just know that it's something that we've always had luck in the past. To discuss possibly being able to connect us to the Douglas Trail. There's the pedestrian recreational trail planning. Basically, the recommendation in here would be to apply this year for the Safe Routes to School Planning Assistance Grant, that they would come and bring about $45,000 worth of services into the community to do community engagement, find out kind of where people think the most dangerous spaces are for kids when they're trying to get around, where the biggest need is, with the goal being to find a way to connect us with the Douglas Trail. And potentially give us some ideas about what the opportunities are for crossing the highway. And then that could be used to apply then for their infrastructure grant. The Safe Routes to School infrastructure grant provides you up to $1 million of funding. They offer this every other year. So this year, currently, they will not be doing that grant, but they will be doing it the following year. Because they just had done one. But it's up to $1 million with no match. There's absolutely no match needed for that. The only stipulation is that then you have to be able to pay for the engineering costs for the final drawings and to oversee the project. For that purpose, I put in here that we'd be making a request for approximately $5,000 that we'd be asking for on an annual basis to be able to set aside to be able to pay for that project when we're able to get to it. Because that way we're not having to go in and ask for $40,000 at once. Instead, we're just asking for the $5,000 over a period of time so that we're able to build up those operating funds. So that when the chance comes, we don't have to scramble.
What do you think the likelihood is that comes through, the Safe Routes infrastructure grant? Is that one that you see a lot of likelihood that when it's applied for, it's received?
Yes, and the reason for that being that I think a lot of people have gone through the planning and the design assistance grants, and then they get there and then they realize how expensive engineering is, and then they all of a sudden stop because they haven't budgeted the funds for it. So a lot of people aren't actually, a lot of cities, sorry, aren't actually able to apply for it until they've got those engineering funds secured. So it's something I think that ends up getting pushed to the back burner in a lot of places. So I think that makes a unique opportunity for us.
So a couple of questions about the trail. Is this a kind of a two-part thing? You're talking about the trails within our city limits and then also a trail down 100th Street or along with the West Frontage Road up to the school?
Well, that is the brilliance of the program. The program does community engagement, and that part of that is they have in-person events where people literally are saying, this is where I want to see a trail. This is where we want to see a trail. So you get to find out a little bit more about exactly where the actual residents are saying, this is where we actually are going to be doing this walking. This is where we want to see it. And then they come up with all the different plans for you to be able to utilize. And then there's a design assistance grant that if you choose to take advantage of, they do a little bit of that background engineering work. Making sure they know, if you're gonna need a culvert in a certain area or those types of things. But it basically would help to identify exactly where the greatest need is for putting in trails and then being able to help make those recommendations.
So in case of the trail going or following West Frontage Road, there's about 6-foot shoulders on either side of the white marks on either side, all the way up to the County Road 5 or the
Mhm.
interchange. And then it's paths. So with that being Pine Island city limits, do we need to coordinate that with city limits or is that?
We'd be able to do just strictly the amount up to city limits. However, I've actually been speaking with the EDA director over in Pine Island, who also is a CETA representative. They're very much in favor of helping us to connect to the Douglas Trail. They want that. They want that connection between Orinoco and Pine Island. So I think that doing an application, like a joint application, would be incredibly beneficial because it would give a lot more support to the application and it would also give you some extra insight from the other side.
School planning assistance grant would be
Mhm.
dual supported by Pine Island or.
Yep. I mean, if they don't want to go through the safe routes to school process, they don't have to, but they can at least provide a letter of support to go along with it. But I think that doing a joint application would probably be very, very beneficial to getting the best information, I guess.
So would you see this as a 3-year? We've talked about Jason's letter about 1, 3, and 5-year goals. So this would be a 3-year goal, you think?
Yeah, a 3 to 5 for sure. I can update this document before we forward it to council as well.
So I would, talk about this, I guess I would put a motion forward that we, put forth, what you've got written up here as far as asking for the 50,000. We had quite a conversation on why. And, that's all detailed in there and, give it off to the city council to see if they're willing to put it in the budget. It's pretty well self-explained. I mean, we sat here the other night quite a while talking about it and what you got laid out here, a couple things. Again, there's some extra money. Again, if we don't spend it, it's there. Eventually it becomes in our budget. So if something comes up for the members who aren't here, then we have some money. Otherwise if you need 5,000 to match 5,000, then you gotta go ask them and say, we don't have any money. And then the grants and everything else go away and you kind of sit here and spin your wheels. So some of that extra money out of that 33, that 50,000 is $15,000 to start a bankroll account. So that if we need to do something, we can do something, to our, responsible and stuff like that. So I'll put a motion on that, we put this, forward to the city council.
With some adjustments.
Yeah, because I'll put in about the $5,000 Compeer grant, and then I'll also add in that the recreational trail planning would be more of a 3 to 5 year plan.
With those amendments, I would do that, yes.
I think it'd be important to put that it's a potentially dual support.
Oh, yep.
Island as well.
Absolutely.
I'll second the motion. For more discussion. So the 50,000 would cover proposed 33,745. And then we'd have the balance of that to go towards a housing study or any other expenses that we might see next year.
Yes, so the request for the funding would be to help cover the contract, the housing study, and the establishing some funds for
Funds for
operating funds.
Annual funds. Yeah.
Yep, that would then also be able to be used in the future for those trail planning purposes. And obviously, if there was something that came up, maybe Parks and Trails came up and they were able to secure this amazing grant to get all these new pickleball courts and they just needed $5,000. And they came to the EDA and said, hey,
Well, Joe is, probably come back to the July meeting, council meeting with a estimate for the paths at Riverwood Hills and
Yep.
also Oracle Park to the pavilion. So we'll have that enduring estimate, at least for that.
yep. But what I'm saying is that if other projects do come up, those could be then reviewed by the EDA and at the EDA's discretion could then be utilized for other purposes as well, because it would become a part of the operating fund, but obviously with the intention of making sure that we can fund those essential projects.
So just one more time, the CETA contract at 33.7. But then on the second page, the market feasibility study, if we want to do that, we could use the balance of that too, if we wanted to.
Market feasibility studies included in the contract.
Yeah, they're included in the contract. It's just that if you didn't have a contract, they could cost 3 to 8 each. Yep.
Correct,
And
thank you.
as you said, the housing study to go to the bank or whatever, which you talked about, they would give a 5,000 grant. So when you take a look at the 9,000 to 12,000, if you get 5 there, then you're only looking at a 4,000 to 5,000, depending on what it is. So you're coming up with 5 and you're not paying the full load. So, it's a plus if that's what they truly want to do. And move the EDA forward, move the town forward, and move it, what they want to do forward is that's how it's gonna happen.
Absolutely.
Some great ideas. I like them.
Anything else you guys want me to make sure that I add in or emphasize more or describe more?
I'd just be very succinct about that 50,000 and how it's going to be used. So it just limits questions about what's included and then, Well, really, this is all for the 5,000 annual allocation is part of the 2026 then.
Yep. So it's already included in the $50,000 request.
2026 proposal.
Well, this is the 2026 proposal, yeah.
Right, so the activation or continuing with the trail planning could be the 3-year plan or whatever we decide to.
Right.
We need to discuss, importance of each one of these, like obviously CETA contracts is probably gonna be the number one. It's going to give, all that additional stuff, but as far as the housing study or the between those two, which would be the one that you would say is 2 and 3? If the council is coming up and saying, well, we can't do 50, but we can maybe do 40, or we can do.
I mean, honestly, the housing study is the only one that would require money upfront. Because the Safe Routes to School Planning Assistance Grant is actually, they provide $45,000 in services to us if we are awarded it. So the 5,000 that we'd be requesting would be basically for putting into our accounts as a savings towards future needs of trail planning. So honestly, we wouldn't have to worry about.
The creation of this savings, would that be number 2 then?
Yep.
Then the housing study number 3?
So I would say housing study before the trail, yeah. Because there's still more time that we'd be able to find additional funds.
One thing about the housing study, I think it's important to have, but when I'm looking at what's in front of us with the condos and with what the other 43 acres or that Ari is doing with him or a developer too, so. And a lot of those plans could be in place this year. So the housing study is really gonna be potentially for a new annexation product or any new product that, property that's annexed, whether it's along 100th Street, the 150 acres, or if we go across 100th Street and start looking at more annexation, which I think we should.
Yeah, and you just have to make sure that you put that into the RFP and make sure that anybody who's putting forward a proposal, that they're going to include that type of activity in there, because I think we also had listed in there that we would like to see a rental analysis, get them to give us a listing of all of the vacant and dilapidated properties so that we know which ones we can apply for different programming for.
Who is the housing study? Who does the housing study?
You would do what's an RFP, so a request for proposal, and put it out there, and then a bunch of different engineering firms will send in their proposals. And then the board will select whichever one that they think is gonna provide the best value, kind of like what we did with Tulip Tree.
Sure. I'm just thinking in terms of engineering firms, and maybe it's way more complicated than it would seem, but we don't have a whole lot of housing units here. And so is engineering firm driving around and identifying what's dilapidated, or I guess I'm trying to think, there's not much housing here. If we all looked at a map for a little while and looked in the MLS database for a while, we could identify what's available.
Yep.
You know, what does the city own? So I guess I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot more to that $10,000 expenditure, but I feel like we could do that, or I could, head a 2-person, 3-person crew to identify what we have now and what we need. And I don't know. I guess I'm not sure what that $10,000 will really get us.
Without the
Well, I'm
land
happy
bank.
to help, just share like what we use them for in Rochester.
Sure.
So it helps us to think about future planning and future vision and growth.
Mhm.
So it does give you a chance to understand what do you currently have, but it also opens up the discussion around what are the gaps. So we might find that we are short on, have a limited stock on rentals, or maybe it's multifamily or senior housing. And so as we continue to grow as an organization, it helps us understand them long-term, where we might want to have conversations and do marketing. Agree, there's a lot of pieces that are changing right now, but they'll take that into consideration and help us form and have a really good discussion, I think, as a broader community to say, how do we help to grow Orinoco?
The big thing is that the money is there, doesn't mean we have to spend it.
Right, no,
I mean,
I'm all
when
about
you-
asking,
when you
yeah.
do that, I mean, when you talk to me and said, well, you might not wanna do some of this, you say, well, okay. As you said, Ryland, that some places are being built, do we really need some of this stuff? But they asked us to come up with what we're asking for, and so you
Right.
put something on a piece of paper, and so it's a starting point again to do that.
Yeah, and
We
a housing,
never have to spend it all or do whatever, and that's
Right.
the biggest
and a
thing.
housing study also isn't just used for determining, what it is that we know, because we can say all day long, yes, we need more housing. But a lot of different developers, especially if they're coming in for rental properties or anything like that, they're gonna want evidence. They wanna know that what it is they wanna build is gonna be successful.
Here for it.
And they're gonna be in these studies, they're gonna be taking into consideration the types of jobs that are available within the city and in the area. They're also gonna be taking into account what the growth, the annual income is for most of the households around here. Knowing what types of housing is gonna be more successful versus others. So it's gonna take all of those different things into account, put that down on paper for us so that we're able to know when we're recruiting in new housing developers, what are we really gonna be wanting to get in versus, well, this person wants to build and they're gonna build these $8 million homes and that's cool, but is that what you need? So it's, in determining where you're gonna be putting different future zoning bits in, what kind do we really want and where do we want it? So it's just a helpful tool is what it is.
Definitely a marketing tool
Absolutely, yep.
for the city to use to promote our city, and here's what our citizens like.
Yep.
How does it fit with your plan, or what do you have to offer?
And they're typically good for 10 years as well, so it's not something you would have to do again for quite some time.
And I think if I may, to go off a little bit more what Jamie was saying too, you gotta look at Mayo is growing. They're going to be growing over the next 5 years. We are gonna play a part in that. They're bringing in thousands of jobs. On top of that, Pine Island has a huge development coming. There's going to be massive jobs coming into that. There's gonna be growth. They're already planning for that. we need to be planning for that as well, because they're going to be looking outside of those areas to see what's available. So if we have this done, we can start planning for that kind of growth to help offset their needs as well. And I know Pine Island's a big one right now. That's a lot of their big talk is their economic growth and their housing with everything that's gonna be happening. And they're looking to us for help. I mean, it's already starting with their school district and trying to figure things out and housing, and
Where do they have this coming to Pine Island?
they've got 500 acres to the north there that's gonna be developed in commercial land. There's gonna be some big
That
development.
sounds like something that happened 10 years ago, remember? 15 years ago when they
Called
put that.
Project Skyway, and it's north of,
North. Yeah,
on the east side of 52 as it goes around Pine Island and goes north again.
Oh, okay.
It's off to the right
Further
going
north.
north. Big strip.
I don't know what's officially been released yet, so I can only say so much. I don't know what's been released yet, but.
I think this is great and I think this is really well put together and I think this is like exactly what I envisioned being brought to council when we proposed that. For the housing study, and I think it's worth putting through, would this be like helping us modify this in the future youth? And then like one of my reservations with doing something like, and even though I think we should absolutely be proposing this and getting the buzz out there, is that until we actually have the land and it's annexed in,
Mhm.
like it's very hard to start planning for something. And I would hate for like this study to come back and be like, well, we need X, Y, or Z, a meat packing plant or this. And now it actually maybe keeps somebody from wanting to annex their
Mhm.
property in, knowing that that's what we're looking for. So I can see a huge benefit of it, but if we don't have the land to develop, I think that's kind of to your point earlier. I'd hate for this to like scare people off of actually wanting to continue to annex in.
Well, and I think it'll actually probably encourage annexation because of the fact that they'd be able to say, well, over the next 5 years, you're gonna need X number of units. And then the city would be able to say, okay, well, it looks like it's time for us to annex in this area. And let's go ahead and get that started so that we can get that residential development done there. And I think that it'll kind of help with that type of planning as well.
Well, that goes along with my thought, and there's nothing here that I see that would directly assist with that, but an annexation process, is that something that should be a bullet, or could be a bullet under the contract as far as annexation,
Oh, being able to help facilitate that?
facilitate
Yeah.
annexation or that type of thing?
Yep, absolutely.
Because I do think there's property along 100th Street. Along here. But then there's also this Mark Keen's property over here too. And that's potential. He's talked about it, but never having done much with it yet.
Yep.
But I know he would like to do that, but. And we've had some brief discussions of getting water utilities, of course, as a developer, they want that all the city to provide, and that's of course not.
Yep. And we have done a number of annexations in the past that we've been able to get the documents all together, worked with the state. It's something that we're able to help get off of Jason's plate essentially.
I do think that's a good opportunity for residential growth, and the same thing with across the street on M1 development too for.
Yep. So I guess also I could add at the end of this that this could be the first step of maybe up to a 10-year plan. Because it is good for 10 years.
Would an annexation process, would it help with that? Would that be included in the contract or?
Yeah, and I'll add that bullet point too.
I think it just, as it goes, these annexation things have a lot of behind the scenes, but I think the point is that we want to emphasize on it too.
Yep, absolutely.
It'll be a really important tool as we grow.
What's that?
It'll be a really important tool as we grow, so
Yes, it's.
having a defined process and.
As you grow to the people that have the land, eventually depending on how old they are, their kids take over, and if the kids have no ties here, cash is king. Where if someone has it and they really enjoy it, they hold on to it longer, but if, once they go, usually the kids, if they have no footings anywhere in the area, they could be in California, they could be in New York, they could be anywhere, and
If you don't know.
they just say, let's unload it, good price. Guy comes in and buys it and wants to annex in. So,
Any other comments? Suggestions? I think it's a great plan, very well thought out. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And,
Being,
uh,
I just have one question. So being, you just mentioned being part of the city council, you appreciated the approach to this. Is there anything else that you think that are missing or things that we should be including at all?
I think that having a plan for what, like, I think with the budget workshop, the plan was to get the wish list, right? Not necessarily like, oh, we have to have this. And so going in with that as your mindset to the budget planning, like this is gonna help us move forward with the budget planning and hopefully we get some of this stuff earmarked early and we're not, making cuts. And I mean, right now, I know that I just saw that Parks and Trails did a little bit of a budget workshop, but I haven't seen anything else and we've had this request out
Okay.
for a while, so as far as I'm concerned, things that have come through and committees that are participating, I think that they should be earmarked first for.
The one thing that we talked about in the previous meetings, but we're not including here is any dollars towards a revolving loan fund.
Right.
Is that you think that's a 3-year plan or where would that fit into?
I think for a revolving loan fund, I think it's, I would love to say it's a 3-year plan. But because they take such substantial dollar amounts, you have to find the project first. So as soon as that project shows up, then yes, so I can certainly put that as a bullet point under CETA that will be able to help facilitate all of the grants and the paperwork that's done for doing like one of those what's known as a MIF grant or Minnesota Investment Fund. Typically, if you get a good business coming in, you can utilize that and they'll end up in the end getting, $200,000 or $300,000 that they give you to be able to start those revolving loan funds. But you just need that project first that's gonna need the assistance. So like, for example, if Two Sisters ends up wanting to do those other buildings out there, and I did actually already approach them about it, and they said that they would definitely be interested in doing that because we'd be able to offer them a loan with this program. And if they're gonna be the ones helping us to start it, we can offer them a 0% interest loan or a 1% interest loan. Part of the benefit of having a revolving loan fund is that you do get to keep it down to 1 or 2%. It's the benefit of the program that people come for it for. They've already said that they'd be interested in helping to participate in that, so I'll put that down as one of the EDA, the CETA contract things.
We've talked about this too, but just to emphasize it again, that the revolving loan funds are meant to be a transition loan. It's not a loan for the whole project.
Yeah,
It's just-
gap funding.
It's just demonstrating to a bank the city's willing to put in this $10,000 interest that we want the project.
And that
Supporting us.
money comes from the state.
Typically. There are some people, some different cities that have been able to do it with private funding, large donors, those types of things that are able to do it, but yeah, it's gap financing is exactly what we typically end up calling it is, they have their loan from the bank, but they're in need of additional funds. And so that's kind of where the EDA would come in. And then I also will plan to add the 3 to 5 year goal and the Pine Island cooperation to the recreational trail planning.
What we don't get this year, we'll bring it back next year and cross off what we did able to do. And
Yep.
continue on.
And for the CETA contract, I will add a line that gives the amount for if we were to continue with the 1 day every other week contract. What that difference would be, just in case they're asking for that number. I just want to make sure that they have it. But I also will put in there in another line that there's an understanding that means the list under CETA becomes half as long.
Please do.
Yep.
Be asked, of course.
I'd like to see, and this won't probably take any kind of funding, but maybe along with this, is I would like to see some of our developers maybe give testimony of why the EDA is important for them as they're coming into the city, what they get out of it as well, and coming into a city with an EDA versus not. I think that will be important to help shed some light on why a lot of these things are important to move forward with. So if we have any developers that we've been working with that would be help like that from their perspective, why EDA is important to them and how that helps them choose where to go, that would be.
Yeah, I'll
I think
reach
that
out
would-
to
I
some.
think that would be just generally beneficial for the council.
Absolutely. Yep, I can certainly reach out for some of those. That's a great idea.
Vote on this then?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
We made a motion and passed it, we can vote, or we need to vote
I
on
was
it?
just getting ready to ask if there's any other comments. Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's approved. Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Just circle back to our branding committee assignment project. So we talked about it at our meeting last Tuesday. We didn't have a quorum, but we did talk about it. And so we wanted to have everybody involved, having all the committee members here, I guess, to make sure that we covered everybody that's interested in doing kind of what we talked about at Tuesday night was and we talked about a committee of 5 or 7.
We were saying, yeah, 7 to 12, I think is what Tulip Tree had said. But we were looking at 3 specifically from the EDA. With one of them, I'd like to just outwardly say, Riley, and I would assume you would be because you're the mayor. You're also on council and you're on EDA. And I feel that because you are mayor and that's a reason that you may want to be a part of the branding process.
I would like that. My schedule's busy, but at the same time, either myself or Jamie as the vice president, I think would be good also to be on that committee as well, so.
Yep.
Right now, we have, Adam and Jan agreed to be on the committee. But I do think 3 would be good, from our EDA to be on it, so if that's.
Well, yep, because last week we just had a kind of a workshop. Since we didn't have a quorum, we just kind of were able to just chit chat about it a little bit. Excuse me. So that's why we figured tonight we would have a little more discussion on who is interested. If there's more people interested than what we can go through why everybody wants to be on, make a selection from there.
So Jan and Adam, are you still interested in being on the committee?
Yeah, if somebody else wanted my spot, sure, but I'm interested in that.
We can only have 3 from EDA?
Well, if we have 4, then we end up having a quorum.
Okay, gotcha.
So then the 3 would be Rylan and you 2, and then Jamie would be the backup if Rylan couldn't show, or Rylan had other commitment.
And that's assuming if Rylan was going to be on, yes, yeah. And I just was throwing that out there as being able to cover two bricks, one stone.
I don't feel like I've lived in Orinoco long enough to be on it, so to be honest, I would be in favor of any other 3. Any of you guys doing it.
I'm fine, Ryland, if you wanna take the lead or I can take the lead and keep you informed. I mean, we work closely on it together. It's up to you. But
Okay.
I'm comfortable being on it, being your backup, being something. You just let me know what you're most comfortable with.
Right. Well,
I mean, you guys can both be on it. I mean, it's just a matter
If we
of,
can't show up.
we'll just have to.
The hesitation tells me it's too.
Are you sure it's still
I-
4 to 4?
I would very highly in favor of having it made up of non-council people. I think getting more people involved in the community outside of who already is involved, I think that's a huge thing. The more people, the better, so.
So why don't, if you had the time, why don't you go ahead?
Sure.
Be the third person, you 3.
Yeah.
That doesn't,
You got these knuckleheads to team up with here.
I'd really like
That doesn't work
to be able to listen and it would be one of those things where I would just be a fly on the wall of, and just being able to keep, kind of tabs on it. And then if this is not going to be something that will be, public or put on the YouTube, getting together with Jason so you can link up the note taker. I think that would be a big deal for the Otter AI thing. For those meetings.
Absolutely.
So then we can kind of search through meeting minutes and kind of understand what's been discussed.
Yeah.
And that would be
absolutely.
available to me also,
Yeah,
what you're talking
we
about.
could
yeah.
get it available to you as
So
well.
I guess the question would be too, is if the other night we didn't have a quorum, can't make it, so that if one of us sit on it, we could just have the other, someone, I guess if you could have more that, but they can't show up as four for a quorum, that if something comes up, could be a death, could be a million and one things that someone else could sit on it and we'd make that call and say, oh, so we have our person, three people on there that someone else.
Well, and typically when you have a team put together like this,
Okay,
there aren't usually a lot of backups, because we're also gonna be having people from the Lions Club,
okay.
the VA, I believe we had, or the Legion. VA.
Well,
Yeah.
my only point was, is that if everyone shows up and it's a scheduled night and all of a sudden you don't have enough for the quorum to do the meeting, and you had someone else that would be able to come and fill in that position, you can still hold your meeting and move things forward.
Yep.
Versus doing like we're doing tonight, holding two meetings because we couldn't have that. So that's my only thought
Yep.
process, is that I would have no problem saying, whatever, just so that the meetings are scheduled, they can go on with a quorum.
Yep, and luckily they don't require a quorum.
Okay,
Yep.
I was gonna say, yeah, because
okay.
by the time we get, let's talk about the Lions Club and how many people we talked about, one or two from each of the organizations, or just
I think
one?
we were saying, yeah, one for sure, but two if they have a strong desire for it. I know we've looked at Age Friendly Orinoco was gonna be another, someone from Parks and Recreation. Who else was on there?
Planning and zoning?
Well, I don't know that planning and zoning is needed for branding.
Okay.
Yeah,
But I do think someone who maybe works with the school or education, should be included, whether they work at the, live here but work at the library or at the school in Pine Island. I think someone who deals with education would be important, to help represent the youth as
well,
well.
Rachel Gray is the director of the Pine Island Library, and she lives here in Orinoco,
That might be a great person then.
so.
Did you ask, because of the branding of the local change and stuff, someone maybe from the volunteer fire department, ambulance service?
Absolutely.
And things of that, because that is like, if you brand something, you change something, they might have an idea of what would look good, what not would look good.
And I also think, from Gold Rush, somebody from Gold Rush. But I think last time we said we'd try to have those individuals identified by the next meeting. And then, we'll be able to get our first meeting set up with Whitney over at Tulip Tree. I know I haven't told everybody yet, but I've told some of you, this is my last meeting here in Orinoco. I'm going to be trying a new adventure out in South Dakota.
Wow.
So I will be done at the end of this month, but last week when we met, Kurt Meester is, from CETA, and he is going to be taking my place. He actually already does work with Tulip Tree. So it was actually his idea even to talk about, doing the shuttle service working with Mayo, because he's doing that with Zumbrota right now. So that's further out. So that's something that he was saying that he could bring to the table as well. But he would be the one who will be able to kind of help facilitate this moving forward. But I wanted to make sure you guys knew that.
That's
But-
delicious.
Yeah, thank you.
What are you
It should
doing in
be-
South Dakota? Yes.
I am, so far, lots and lots of applications are out. I have not made a full decision, but I am doing the stupid thing and I am moving for love. So. So we shall see. But I did want you guys to know that when it comes to that process with the, community branding, he's actually already been working with Tulip Tree, so he's very familiar with Whitney, so he's gonna be an excellent person to being able to help lead that process too, so.
So right now, if we just have the three of us, Lions, VFW, Age Friendly Parks, Rachel Gray, the librarian, and Gold Rush, that's 9 people.
That sounds perfect.
So,
And then Jason, I think you'd be at least, well, you wouldn't have to attend all of them, but
Yeah.
maybe.
My thought is if we put Mel on there,
oh, yeah.
we do kind of a cross at Gold Rush and our office. And knock 2 birds with 1 stone.
That's a great idea.
And put her in there, and she's again a local and obviously been here a long time and.
Yep.
I also,
Any,
I was just gonna say, like, all these people that we've listed are already actively involved in organizations, so to think about trying to get others, I know sometimes we have to cast a bit of a wider net, but there may be other people in the community that if you did an open call, that there might be a few people that we could continue to get
Mhm.
more involved. I know it creates a lot more process, but maybe Kurt could help just navigate that and try to get a few more people from the community to get involved with some of these things.
Thinking like some business owners that.
Yep, absolutely.
Local business owners.
Yeah.
I mean, if they own in Rochester, that's fine too, but like,
well, the,
I got another meeting.
okay.
All right, thank you, Dan.
Bye, Jan.
So the steering committee says, what type of, is it once a month? What is, your experience
That'll
with Whitney?
be something that I think Tulip Tree will address with us at the very first meeting. I think Whitney's, my guess is that in the beginning, it'd still be just once a month, because she'll be taking in a lot of information and then coming up with secondary ideas that then she'll take in more information and then finally come out with some potential solutions and ideas.
So do you think it's a 6 to 8 month process, if people that we're talking to here?
I would guesstimate around 6.
That's what she had in her proposal.
Yeah,
and it
with
goes
6.
Up to 6.
It should move pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think honestly, once a month is probably all she'll need with the steering committee, but, because the first time it'll just be to gain a lot of information, and then she'll be doing a lot of work outside of that steering committee, and then bringing it back, getting some feedback, and then doing that again. So it'll be mostly feedback that the steering committee will be doing.
So the Tulip Tree proposal, was there comments about steering committees and kind of a expectations of what being involved with the steering committee is all about, so we can
No, there wasn't anything in there. It just that they'd be conducting them.
input?
I think what we just want to make sure is that I think where you're headed is that what's the language that we're using so we don't accidentally give like decision-making power to a steering committee group that's providing input along the way,
Right.
correct? So
That's-
we may just want to make sure that we have some language written up, so if whomever is asking these people, I don't know who's gonna ask these people, that says, what are we trying to do? And what is the desired outcome that we're trying to reach, and what's their role? So maybe there's something we can.
Well, and I think that's something we'll probably want to work out with Whitney then.
Yeah. She probably should have something, she's done this before.
Yep.
sorry, do we want to include anybody from the history society too? I feel like maybe getting.
That would be fantastic, yeah.
Like,
No kidding, yeah.
I know that there's a lot of very
Information.
involved. And they can give some feedback, so I don't know
None
if
of
we
us
can
have.
double dip in,
Yeah.
Lions or VFW or,
Yeah,
but that might
That's
be another.
that's
another
some knowledge
Mhm.
there. so.
And if we reach out to, say, we're reaching out to the head of the VFW, and it's not necessarily the head of the VFW, it needs to be the member of the team. It could be someone who's more of an at-large citizen, but has those same interests involved. So being able to identify those individuals that way, I think is good, as, contact the leader of that organization, but let them know, we're looking for people who have an everyday view of the community, that's kind of what's needed.
I'll put this out there. I've seen in other communities, they also involve high school students on committees. Seems like something where it might be advantageous to have a youth member.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I'm looking at these pieces and I think the history of our community is important, and we're trying to look like,
Where's the
what are we
future
planning
too?
for the
Mhm.
future? So having.
And I do think that students would be a really good focus group to have as well,
That's where someone from the school district would be able to help facilitate that, but if we also
Yep.
have an actual student on the committee, a high school student, usually like maybe a junior or senior, you kind of put in stipulations to say, hey, we're looking for someone this age range. It's resume pattern for them.
I was
that they
just gonna
were-
say, application
committee.
for college.
Yeah, but also the fact that we get the input from them.
So maybe we have this list of people or hopefuls that we put out there, and we don't have to necessarily have all of them, but give them the opportunity to participate. And if we get a good group that include this, I think that would be a great.
Yep. And then what Whitney has said is that she is open for meetings typically on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday mornings. And then on Wednesday and Friday afternoons. So when we do reach out to individuals to determine who's gonna be on this, that's something we'll want them to know, just because we need, at the next EDA meeting, we're hoping to have all of these individuals identified, because we need to get that first meeting set with Tulip Tree. Otherwise, we're just gonna be pushing it off, trying to determine who's gonna be on it. So we just need to make sure by our next EDA meeting on the 24th, that we're ready to solidify a date and get that over to Whitney.
Will the new CETA rep help us to reach out to these people, or is that on us to reach out? to them?
Well, it's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. Are you guys gonna reach out individually? Like, how do you wanna do the reach out? Cause honestly, I think you folks reaching out to people you know is gonna, especially with the short turnaround, is gonna be the best and quickest way to do this. Cause I'm sure you have people in your communities that you know, like, oh, they'd be good for this, or, you know, I know this business owner, or I know this high school student, or.
So I can put a list of names to people against all these organizations.
Yep.
I think I do contacts with everybody. So why don't I put that list together and, maybe are you here next week?
I'm here till the 20th.
So why don't we put together some bullet talking points? And I like the idea of contacting them.
Would you maybe want to put
Sure.
together a list of individuals and then send it out to the whole team? Or the whole EDA board, and then everybody would be able to just chime in with if there were other names? Just to make sure everybody's got a chance to review it, or?
Yeah, ultimately, if we're gonna do that personally, we just need to identify who's gonna contact who
Okay, yep.
and respond back, so.
I like the.
But I agree with
idea of the
Jason,
whole
it's a personal touch. Goes a long ways versus
Yep.
an email that never gets read.
Well, that's why I'm thinking if you send it out to the whole board, then everybody can say, yep, I'll reach out to this person, I've got this. And then with ones that are left, if we need to, you can get me information and I will be more than happy to reach out as well.
So then, while we do that, then we can kind of maybe share this with Whitney, what we are preparing to send out to the committee, EDA. So she can get, yeah, this is great, too many, fewer, whatever, because we need to work with her as well, so.
Yeah, and she did say that she'd like to keep it to 12 or under.
So we may have to. But not everybody's able to spend time during the day or the afternoon. It's all daytimes.
Well, and I think when she says afternoon, that would include like early evening, so like a 5:30 meeting would probably be just fine.
Did you get a confirmation on that?
I know that she had said that initially in that for her meeting with us, that she'd be able to do that. But I just think she's trying to stay away from like 6:30, 7 o'clock starts. Being in Stewartville, I'm sure she's used to the fact that most people aren't getting back into town until a little after, since so many people work out of town.
Okay, let's do that.
All right.
Great. Anything else?
Did the EDA do a formal thank you to the developer that contributed the $5,000 to the budget?
I did send out a handwritten thank you, yep.
Great idea.
Thanks for doing that.
Yeah.
I'm old school, I like them handwritten.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
So moved.
Second. Anybody else? You second?
No, I was.
I'll second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Opposed?
All righty.
Good luck.
Rebecca, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.